Hello, hello. We have a special speaker, publisher, and author all the way from the UK today on Awaken and Ascend. Sandra Bellamy is joining me to share about her asexual journey and how you can be who you are and not the person that you were born into being, which is a very interesting play on words. So I'm very much looking forward to you all hearing what Sandra has to share with us today. So I'm just going to roll it over to you, Sandra. I
Okay,
am welcome.
it's lovely to be here. Your YouTube show is absolutely amazing, so I'm really honored to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you
So
so much. And I'm really looking forward to you enlightening us on the topic of asexuality because it's really something I admit I haven't heard a lot of. And there's a lot that I know that you'll be sharing on that about what it all means, how to be your most authentic, best self, and live your life in that way. I know you've already found your calling, your purpose, and you're living this life. So you're a fantastic role model for all of us. So I'm really curious, Sandra, what actually inspired you on this journey?
so I discovered I'm asexual in 2014, and it was very difficult circumstances because I went to a counselor, a professional NHS trained counselor in the UK. And I told her that I was worried because I like romance, I like kissing, but I didn't want sex. Couldn't bring myself to have that anymore. So the expectation of sex at the end of the night with a date with a heterosexual guy was making me almost wet myself because I was that anxiety induced and nervous about it. And I
Mm.
knew it's because I just couldn't do that anymore. So in 2013, I had a brief relationship with a Bangladeshi guy, and he was very aesthetically hot and really my aesthetic type. I was very attracted to him, but I just couldn't have sex with him. And I realized like my body is kind of different to my mind. Even if my body has some sort of response to the attraction and to kissing, I in my mind didn't want to have sex. So I couldn't, do that anymore. At that particular time, I didn't, I still wasn't fully in self-love. So I did something to please him, which I wouldn't do nowadays. I'm very strong with boundaries with heterosexual guys, but back then, I was doing stuff like just to please him, and it was really awful, and I wouldn't do that again. I mean, he cheated on me,
Mm.
within a short period of time. And so that was kind of an awakening to, oh, I'm different. There's something different about me. There's something different going on. And that's in 2014 when I spoke to the counselor. Now there is, because this is a spiritual podcast, I'm going to share something with you that I don't always share on every channel in every interview, and that is something weird happened. So on my last therapy session, because I've had depression and anxiety, I've still actually got anxiety, but on my journey, if you like, with depression and anxiety, I got told by this therapist that I no longer needed any therapy because I was answering all the questions myself. It was a counselor, actually, I believe. And I'm like, oh, this is really good news. So I left, didn't think anything of it. And then about 8 months later, I get this call out of the blue saying you've been on our waiting list and you can now see a counselor, like this therapist, on the NHS. And I'm like, this is really weird because I didn't put myself on a waiting list. I didn't know that anyone else put me on a waiting list. So obviously, spiritually, I believe everything happens for a reason. And at that point in my life, I was already of that mindset. So I thought, this is really weird. So I spoke to the woman on the phone. She seemed really nice. And I thought, I'm going to go to it because there must be like a divine reason why I've got to go to see this counselor. But I didn't ultimately exactly know what it was because I wasn't like given any warning that I was even on a list. So anyway, I thought it's got to be to do with the fact of a relationship. That's the only thing I could think it was. So when I spoke to this counselor and I explained how I was feeling, and I was feeling really bad at the time because I love romance and love kissing. I'm actually a hyper kisser and a hyper romantic. I've discovered through my asexual journey. And but then I didn't know I was so strong on those things. So I just said, like I want a relationship without, with kissing and romance, but without the sex.
Mm.
And I'm really worried about that,
Mhm.
because I thought I was the only one in the world, planet, and universe that didn't want, like, or need sex, you see, at this point. And I'm thinking I'm all alone. And you know, she said the worst thing she could have possibly said to me. And that was, you're going to have sex in order to keep a good guy.
Wow, she said that to you.
Yeah. And I was so horrified. I'm like, how can this guy be any good, whatever guy it is for me, if he wants me to do something that I don't want to do in order to get love from him, in
Right.
order for him to be good to me? So my mind was like, this is just not right. And I was horrified because I'd gone to her for some sort of like understanding, compassion, and to build a way forward. And I was kind of met with this roadblock that was just horrifying. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so that prompted me to go outside of that counseling session and Google, I love kissing, but not sex. And
Oh.
that, when it came up with asexuality.org, which is the biggest online forum for asexuals. And I went on those forums and discovered there's thousands of people around the globe that were like me, that wanted a relationship without sex. Some are romantic and some are not, but in the forums I saw, there were romantic asexuals on there. And I'm like, oh my God, there's more than just me. Hell, like,
Yes.
like I'm amazed, and it felt such a relief. And so if I hadn't have seen the counselor, if she hadn't have been that way with me, I would have then gone and Googled that and found out at that point in my life that I'm asexual.
Hmm.
So, you know, everything happens for a reason in divine timing. And that's a very like appropriate obviously for this show, and to explain, you know, these things do really happen. And it was like a journey of discovery since then. So 2014, I knew I'm asexual. It took me about 3 weeks to work out where I fall on the asexual spectrum. And I didn't know that, just like, you know, if you're lesbian or gay, then there's this thing where you come out as being lesbian or gay. I'm not lesbian or gay, but most people like know it as coming out as asexual, but back then I didn't know about asexuality. So I just casually phoned my mum walking down the street in my city going, hey mum, you know, I've come across this term asexuality and it sounds like me and I think it, you know, fits me. And then I had another phone call which was in the street with my mum. My dad's in the background because you can hear everything. There's no privacy in my parents' home. Like what I ever try my mum goes straight to my dad. And so yeah, I said it about it again, and my parents like said, oh, it sounds like you. So I think my dad must have been looking up for my mum, because my mum doesn't go on the internet, and they said it sounds like that's what I am, if you know what I mean. And so I was really happy to have discovered myself at last, because obviously I was born into society and I was conditioned, like people are conditioned to believe that everyone's heterosexual, which we know isn't true. But we're conditioned from birth to believe that heterosexuality is the normal sexuality, the one that everyone's supposed to be. And, you know, and this is what you're meant to be. And then I found out I'm not actually that. Well, I thought I was heterosexual for years. And so it's been a real awakening. Over my journey of discovery of myself, I've discovered that I do actually have high levels of arousal, but zero sexual attraction, and that
Hmm.
they are in fact two different things. And I mistook my high arousal levels when I'm kissing, for example, thinking about kissing, for sexual attraction, when they're two different things. I realized that I haven't looked at any of my exes and thought, I want sex with you, you
Hmm.
know, to that guy. And so I'm like, oh, I don't experience sexual attraction because I don't look at a guy or anyone. I'm only interested in guys. I don't look at anyone and think I want sex with you. But I do have loads of pleasure and excitement through kissing. It's the kissing that's a thing for me, not the sex. And so yeah, and then in 2015 I started my Asexualise, my Asexual Life YouTube channel, which has turned into like a ongoing live stream about using my own asexual daily life experiences to help inspire and empower others who are asexual to get through those daily challenges. Because, you know, being asexual affects like your relationships with friends, you know, a partner or potential partner. It affects, you know, in your works. Obviously people can make sexual connotations, or, you know, people in general society can start saying, oh, you know, it's normal for everyone to have sex, it's natural, you know, what's wrong with you? And so
Hmm.
I like to share my own asexual life journey continuously on a daily basis, often, to show how you can be confident and empowered as an asexual to get through the challenges all the time that brings, and still be like positive as possible. You know, I do cry on my channel, so I'm not the type of person that holds things in. I cry and I show people real emotion so they can see what I'm going through, and then I explain how I'm getting over this difficulty in my life. And I think that helps people because it's real life experience, and they see someone really living the asexual life rather than just giving textbook definitions of it, which anyone can get off the internet. It's good to sit in real life context of how it affects daily living, so that people can know that they can get through the challenges because they see me getting through them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's real, it's raw, and it's daily life for you. And people are seeing that every day, you know, in and out, what this life is actually all about and what you move through. And it is true. It's only in comparisons that we think that something's wrong, right? That we don't measure up, or that we're not like another person, or and then to feel so alone in that, so alienated and isolated and wondering, you know, what's wrong with me, and then being nudged into looking and finding that opening, a whole new world of potentials, and that you're certainly not alone. And now you carrying that forth by being there for other people on the daily, you know, showing them that they're not alone. And not only that, but what the journey's actually like, and what you go through day to day, and how you can come together. And that's what I think, you know, in the word community, it's coming together in unity, you know, coming together and unifying on this commonality and in your values as well. And that's building up the community, you know. And so it's not just there's other people like you, it's like every people are being brought together and building a community around this, and being like a force to reckon with, that this is real and there's nothing wrong with it at all. But I'm curious, Sandra, like in thinking that something might be wrong with you, did you have to go through like medical tests, for example, to find out, you know, physiologically or physically whether something was wrong, or if there was like this resistance and what that was about? Or how did that all come about for you?
So for me personally, I'm very confident about being asexual. I love being asexual. I welcome it. Someone the other day turned around and said to me, "Oh, there must be a lot of shame over that." And I was horrified. I'm thinking, I don't have any shame in being asexual. I love it. So I never had any medical tests or anything like that, because asexuality isn't a medical condition. It's not a disorder. And so I have no reason to go and get a test, because there's nothing wrong with being asexual. And
Yeah,
so,
so prior to you discovering that you're asexual, you didn't have to go through all of that. And yet there's
oh,
other people that might be going through that, and it can be really self-defeating and horrifying, like you say, and have shame wrapped around in all of that. And yeah, I think it's really useful for people to recognize that there doesn't need to be any need for all of that.
yeah, I mean, I was an asexual who had sex in the past. So I guess
Hmm.
that's a caveat, if you like. So I had my first heterosexual relationship boyfriend at 6 years old, which is very young.
Wow.
And looking back on that relationship now, I know I was born asexual but didn't realize it. So at 6 years old, the guy was the same age as me. We met through school, but he wanted, I actually was passionate kissing him at 6 years old, but he wanted to do what a counselor later told me was sexual exploration. So at 17 years old, I was still traumatized by what happened at 6. The fact that the guy kissed me, which was great, but he wanted to like look at down below at my private parts, basically.
Hmm.
And that traumatized me because I knew it's wrong, but at that time I felt a lot of pressure by him, even at 6 years old, to do that. And I lacked self-love back then. So
Hmm.
there was power going on but with him, with me. And there was actually blackmail going on by him at 6 years old, which is very not good. So
Wow.
yes, I haven't really dived into that much, but yeah, so it was like, it was emotional blackmail, like, oh, you do this and then I'll still be your boyfriend, this type of stuff. So yeah, at 6, so that was quite hard. But I know looking back that I was asexual because I was fine with the kissing. I loved it. But as soon as he wanted to like look at like that, I wasn't happy. And the counselor at 17 goes, "What's wrong? You know, basically, why are you crying? It's just doctors and nurses. It's natural for everyone to be like that." I'm like, it's not natural for me. It really disturbed me. And I don't want to ever do that again. It was awful. I had it. I felt guilty for years for allowing that guy to do something to me to look at that I didn't want him to, you know? He
Yeah.
did he did ask me and I did say yes, but I felt I had to because I was pressurized rather than because I wanted to. And so that was kind of a difficult experience for me. But I'm glad that I had the experience in the sense that I now can see that I was always asexual and born like it. I've always had a problem with nudity. I'm an asexual that's nudity repulsed these days. But in the past, I have been naked with my exes, my heterosexual exes. I have had sex in the past. Probably didn't have it as much as some other people would, but yeah. So I believe my unique experience of heterosexual relationships is how I'm best placed to serve my mission, which I believe is a spiritual mission, which is to get asexuality recognized as a sexual orientation in its own right throughout the globe, so no asexual has to live in fear of ridicule ever again. So I believe that's my mission given by God and the universe, and I believe that it's up to me to foster understanding between heterosexuals and asexuals and get asexuality recognized globally, specifically with heterosexuals. There's a lot of people doing work in the LGBT plus community because in the acronym LGBT plus QIA stands for asexual and some other things. And so there's quite a lot of people knowing about it in that sphere, if you like, doing work in there. But I believe it's my job to get it recognized, you know, also independently of that in its own right, because a lot of people, they misunderstand. They're like, "Oh, so you're a lesbian then," they say to me. I'm like, "No, I'm not a lesbian. I'm attracted to guys, but I don't want sex." And they obviously think that's not normal, so they don't understand. So I think it's really important, you know, that we have understanding and that I can foster that understanding between heterosexual and asexuals, because I've been in heterosexual relationships. I thought I was heterosexual for years, and I understand their thinking, their mindset, and their way of life, if you know what I mean, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
It makes sense. And you're talking too about being the person you're meant to be, not the one you're born into being. So can you elaborate on that a little bit more as well and delve into what you mean by that? Because I do see the spiritual nature of that as well. It's just like in another way, fate versus destiny, right? There's living by default and living by other people's expectations and society's needs and so on. And there's the life that we create for ourselves, right? The one that feels very true for who we are and comes from a place of integrity and operates from the frequency of our soul as well, right? So yeah, share a little bit more about that, please, Sandra.
So it goes back really to the conditioning that I was talking about. So when we're born, we're kind of like conditioned by our parents or other caregivers, by our, you know, like grandparents, cousins, you know, our family, our teachers, whatever we come into contact with. And it's all conditioning. It's all like societal conditioning, and the people we surround ourselves with, that's all conditioning. And so basically, I was born into being told I was heterosexual, but actually I'm born to be asexual, if that makes sense. So
Oh,
you can be born into being told you are this being, this entity, this life force, this person, but then you can find out you're actually something else, and this is who you're meant to be. But you were being who other people conditioned you and told you you were. So I think this applies to entrepreneurs as well. A lot of entrepreneurs obviously realize that 9 to 5 job and how we're conditioned by school and university and everything, you know, to do a 9 to 5 job, work for someone else, and not really, you know, switch off to your own like destiny and purpose, because you know they want you to conform to them, to do the work for them, to basically pay their money to facilitate what they're doing rather than living your own life, if you know what I mean. There's nothing wrong with working a job and living your passion as well, but you know, you've got to discover your purpose and your passion, and often it's not what we're conditioned to believe to be who other people think we are and they want us to be. It's better to be ourselves. And so, you know, I believe that we all have a way of being that's unique to us, and that we need to lean into that. But we can't hear all that with noise and stuff like that in the world, like people who've gone through a lot of trauma, which is quite a lot of people in the world, you know, that trauma has two different effects. One is obviously you're traumatized at the time, so that affects your relationships and attachment styles and everything like that. But two is like through the trauma is often how you find who you're actually truly meant to be eventually. And it takes you down a path on lots of different winding paths to eventually discover who you're born to be. But we have to stick up for ourselves as well, which is a big thing to do, you know, stick up to our parents or our caregivers or our teachers and stuff like that, if it's safe to do so, obviously, and especially as an adult to be ourselves. So my parents are very conservative, you know, they don't talk about sex or anything like that, right? And so my dad follows my channel, but it's not to his liking because he thinks I'm saying stuff that he kind of like wouldn't approve of, because he doesn't believe in having conversations like this. He believes in privacy and everything. So me sharing my life story is difficult for him.
Yeah.
But I have to live my authentic life. I have to be me and live my purpose. As far as I'm concerned, you know, I'm helping other asexuals. I'm changing, you know, people's perceptions of what's normal love, if you know what I mean. I'm helping asexuals have a voice when they can't speak up for themselves. And I do build community as well, because I've got 6 asexual groups I manage on Facebook, as well as my YouTube community. I've gone over 2,000 subscribers now, but I've had 780,000 plus views on my channel. So I'm just keeping growing and growing and growing. So that my point is even if your parents don't necessarily agree with everything you do, or some other people don't, you still have to be you and be true to who you are and appreciate yourself and still stand strong in your personal power to do what you're meant to do, regardless of what anyone else says, thinks, or does. That's like my embrace your quirky philosophy. It's all about being your true authentic self, regardless of what anyone else says, thinks, or does. That was a philosophy I had before I found out I'm asexual, and I brought that to asexuality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and standing so strong, Sandra, I see you in your convictions as well, because even at 6 years old, that boy telling you that, you know, this is happening and I'll still be your boyfriend, like, and then years later, having that counselor tell you, well, you need to have sexual intercourse for you to keep a good man. And, you know, it's the same story again, many years later from a different person. And both times you're like, no. That's not true. That's maybe your belief, but that is not who I am and what I have to do. And it set you on this journey to really go into your truth, right? To bring things into alignment and find out what it is exactly that's really going on and that's true for you. You know, and not carrying other people's beliefs, like your dad, you know, not wanting that aired out. Well, then he doesn't have to share that. That's his belief and his way of being and doing, and you're staying strong, but still he'll tune in because, you know, he wants to support that. He wants to learn and be open to that. So, you know, we celebrate those open minds and the possibilities and the willingness for people to listen and learn and be educated about it and then form their own, you know, ideas and opinions about it, but doesn't change who you are, what you stand for, and how you choose to live your life. So I really commend you for staying strong in your convictions and living an authentic self life and being able to share your journey without the shame, you know, and being vulnerable and crying when you need to, you know, and continuing to build community and recognize how many hundreds of thousands of people are tuning in.
Yeah, it's really good because I don't share obviously my challenges in life. I share my asexual life, the good bits, like I go to theme parks. I do a lot of self-dating, which is very important. So I share
Hmm.
my, you know, like I'll take a quick shorts video of the fact I'm at the cinema on another self-date, and I went to the quayside this week, so I'll share like a shorts video of the quayside. And like I did go to see my parents, and I did a shorts video of like Dawlish seafront because they live in Dawlish in the UK. And so I take shorts videos of my asexual life, so that it's my channel has evolved over the years from just being educational to being like educational, informational, but also lifestyle and entertainment channel. So
Yeah.
people
Okay.
can people can see me having fun with my asexual life, which is so important, you know, because some people are like, oh, your life must be so boring because you don't want sex, how do you live? And I'm like, I live very happily, thank you, without sex. I don't have to deal with the mess. I don't have to deal with sexually transmitted diseases or infections. I don't have to do stuff I don't want to do. I don't have to risk getting pregnant. There's lots of benefits to not having sex. Just obviously people who like sex would say there's a lot of benefits to having sex, but there's also benefits to not having sex. We could put all that time, energy, and effort, we'd be doing that into other things and be productive with our lives and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
focus it on what we love and adore. And sex is not healthy for people who don't want it. I have to stress that, because they're like, everyone, it's healthy for everyone. But if someone really doesn't want, like, or need sex, then it's not healthy for them, because they feel, they don't feel like they want it or need it. And that's very important to stress.
Yeah. So for people who are still trying to wrap their head around this, can you share, Sandra, how it's different from celibacy? Like, to me, celibacy is more like of a choice, where asexuality is just you really aren't attracted to sex. Is
Yeah.
that
So,
right?
well, I'll dive into it a little bit deeper. So
Thank you.
asexuality in broad terms is the lack of sexual attraction. That's what it is in broad terms.
Okay.
And or little to no interest in sexual activities as a full, like, definition. But you could have the asexuality is also a spectrum ranging from pure asexuals, those who don't experience any sexual attraction whatsoever, to the grey asexuals that do experience sexual attraction, but only under limited, rare, or specific circumstances, or they experience it but not enough to want to act on it. So you've got pure asexuals and grey asexuals, which can get confusing. So some asexuals are sex repulsed, like I am personally for me these days. Some asexuals are sex neutral and some are sex positive. So some asexuals do have sex, which is quite shocking to some people. Like, oh, I didn't think asexuals ever had sex, but some do. If they've got a heterosexual partner, some might have sex with them, but sex repulsed asexuals usually don't, because they're repulsed by sex. So it depends on the individual asexual, and usually the ones on the grey end of the asexual spectrum are more likely to be in the category of sex neutral or sex positive and not really bothered about it one way or the other, because they've got the grey areas. So it's really kind of a mindful. I'm trying to put it in such simplistic terms, but also the lack of sexual attraction is not the lack of sexual action. So it means that some people who are not sexually attracted to someone can still participate in sex as an act in and of itself. And some asexuals feel the sensations of sex, some don't. They kind of numb out to it, especially if they're not really into it. And that's kind of hard, because it's like disassociating from themselves, which is why it's actually not healthy for someone to have sex if they don't want it and need it. Do you know what I mean? And in terms of celibacy, yes, people think often that asexuality is the same as celibacy, and you're absolutely right. It's celibacy is a choice, whereas asexuality isn't. So no one chooses to be asexual. It's something you're often born like, but don't realize till later. But there are exceptions to that. There are people that discover they're asexual much later in life, and they didn't identify as it before, and they don't think they were born like it. So, but in the main, most people identify it later on in life, but they were born asexual but didn't realize it. And so celibacy and abstaining are both a choice, and often they have the sexual urges still. A person who's celibate still has those urges. They repress or suppress them or distract their mind, whereas I'm asexual. I don't repress or suppress any urges because I don't get them in the first place. So I went on, I was kissing a guy last year. So I'm an asexual that really leans into my own personal passions and understands myself really well for my journey. And I think it was in 2019, I spoke on my channel that I'm going to allow myself to kiss guys outside of a relationship, because I figure I'm going to be single for a long time and I have kissing needs that I want met, even though I don't have sexual needs, I don't want sex. So last year there was this guy who I met in this nightclub, and I ended up kissing him, but I'm a hyper kisser. So we were kissing nearly non-stop for over 4 hours, which
Whoa.
yeah, which is like, to me, that's just normal for me. But it's like everyone else is like, oh my gosh. And the guy was saying at the end of the night, it's like, how do you stop yourself having these urges? Like, how are you doing this? I said, I don't have those urges. I'm asexual. I explained it. But he didn't believe me, he was like, he's very he was from, I think it was a Muslim background, and he just didn't believe in that type of thing. And also he wasn't very nice about gay people, which wasn't good. I didn't know this until I was at that point where, like, he was asking me about the urges and stuff, and I'm like, well, you know, I don't get them. And I realized he wasn't a good guy. He was still married, actually, from a woman in his country, but separated. And I didn't know that at the time. He lied to me and said he'd only been in the UK. No, he's lied to me and said he'd been in the UK a lot of years, but he hadn't. He'd only been in the UK for like 8 months instead of 8 or 9 years that he made out previously. So I never thought I'd kiss a married man in my life. But I know it's not my fault because he led me into thinking he wasn't that. So that was tough. But I'm glad that I told him about asexuality. I always use situations like this to educate people. But yeah, he didn't believe me. And I've had that in the past with heterosexual guys. They don't believe me, especially because I kiss a lot, they just don't believe in asexuality. Sometimes they just don't think it's true. But I really don't get that, being able to kiss for 4 hours and not want sex, do you know what I mean? It's, to me, it's like categorical proof that I don't experience sexual attraction.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'm always self-reflecting and thinking, okay, how are you feeling? Is your mind ever going to, I want sex? I'm like, no, it isn't. So, I'm checking in with myself because I think it's really important to be self-aware and
Yeah.
to check your body and to check in with your mind, your emotions and your feelings, so that you can be congruent with what you think and feel and also what you know about yourself, line it up.
Really is a self-awareness journey. Like you say, there's no tests per se, like no diagnosis. There's nothing, that really defines it unless you just resonate with it, that you feel it, you inherently know this and you trust your own knowing about it. And so what if people wanted to find out more, they wanted to connect with you, Sandra? How can they do that?
They can find me at my channel called Asexualise. That's Asexualise, Asexualise My Asexual Life. That's on YouTube. That's like where I'm at a lot. And then I'm at Asexualise Official on Instagram. I'm at Asexualise on Twitter, known as X now, and I've got my Facebook/Asexualise page, spelled Acexualise, because Facebook won't allow the HTTP address, the asexual HTTP address. They won't recognize it as a valid word, which is very difficult. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. Okay, well, we'll definitely have all of those links in the show notes, along with Sandra's full biography, and you'll find out more about her books as well, and her speaking engagements, her blog, her YouTube channel. There's lots of information that's out there, and I encourage you to connect directly as well. So we'll have all those links down there below, including my own information at lightingthepath.ca. You'll find all the information of what I do when I'm not on Awaken and Ascend hosting this show. Sandra, I believe you actually have a gift for all of our viewers as well. What was that?
Yeah, so I have two websites actually that I didn't mention. So asexualise.com, which is spelled
Okay.
the same way as before, asexualise.com. But I also have Asexualise Academy. If they go to that, they can sign up for a free online training course. So there are signs that you can tell maybe you're asexual by going through the video training course. So if you sign up, it's free through
Oh,
Asexualise
great.
Academy. And it's a
Okay.
video training series that explains the basics of asexuality. So it's Asexuality Basics for Beginners course, and they can go through it. It's like just online modules, and I explain like the asexual spectrum in a bit more detail, romantic and non-romantic asexuals, this type of thing. I've also got a book out on Amazon. Well, two books. One is called Asexual Perspectives, 47 Asexual Stories, Love, Life and Sex, A Celebration of Asexual Diversity. This is really good because this answers pretty much any question you've got when you're new to asexuality. So it busts through loads of myths and stereotypes, such as, do asexuals watch porn? Do they masturbate? Are they into BDSM and kinks? What's the difference between sexual attraction, sexual desire, and arousal? What advice would you give to a younger version of yourself or someone discovering they're
Oh,
asexual?
yeah.
So it's a really good resource. Obviously, this is on Amazon, so this isn't free, but it's still, a very good resource to have. And it doesn't just give textbook definitions of asexuality, it explains asexuality across the globe of different opinions and different perspectives, and across different parts of the asexual spectrum. So there's 46 asexuals and my own personal story in this, and they tell their story through the answers to the interview questions. So it's like really useful. And I got Diary Confessions of a Hyperromantic Asexual. That became a bestseller and #1 hot new release last month. So
Yay.
on Amazon.com and Amazon.co.uk. So I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, this is my own personal diary. It's like again my authentic self, and it's like an extension of my channel. and it's got 78 life lessons to ace your life in there as well. So yeah.
Beautiful. That's amazing, Sandra.
Thank you. Thank you.
You really are embodying all of this, and I'm so grateful for everything that you shared and your beautiful presence here today. I'm curious if there's anything else that you'd like to share with the audience.
I think it's important to be yourself in life, and when adversity hits us, I think we have to see it as a opportunity to grow ourselves into the next level best version of ourselves. So I think that's really important. And obviously it's good to be who you're born to be, not who people told you you were when you were born, basically.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Thank you so much. And again, everyone, take a look at the show notes there. Give us a thumbs up if you like this video, and we'd love to hear your comments. So be sure to share your comments, opinions, questions, anything that you need. We'll be looking for those too. Thank you so much, Sandra. I really enjoyed having you as my guest.
I loved being here. Thank you so much.
And thank you to each and every one of you that are listening and watching on Awaken and Ascend. We're here every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific. We'll see you again next time. Bye for now.